Welcome back to the After Action Reset. I'm Steve Geiger. I'm not a therapist, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not here to hand you another motivational speech that sounds good for 6 minutes and then disappears the second real life hits you in the mouth. I am, however, a United States Marine, a husband, a father, a law enforcement officer, and a recovering alcoholic. I've spent a lot of years around pressure. Some of it came with the job. Some of it came home with me. Some of it came from relationships. Some of it came from mistakes. And some of it came from carrying things I didn't know how to put down. This show is about practical recovery, not pretending stress doesn't exist, not trying to become emotionally bulletproof, and not acting like a breathing exercise is going to erase 20 years of overload. The goal is to recognize survival mode earlier, recover faster, respond better, and become available again for the people, responsibilities, and purpose that actually matter in your life. Today, we're talking about reaction mode. That moment when something happens and your body responds before your mind has even finished processing it. Say, for instance, you snap, you shut down, you walk away, you assume the worst. Maybe you get defensive. You say something you regret. Then later, when the pressure comes down, you're sitting there thinking to yourself, why on earth did I react like that? Sometimes the answer is simple. Maybe you were tired, hungry, irritated. But sometimes the answer goes much deeper. Sometimes your nervous system has spent so long preparing for danger that it reacts before your thinking brain ever gets a chance. That's called reaction mode. And when you've lived in survival mode long enough, reaction can start feeling like your actual personality. Well, I'm here to tell you it isn't. It's a pattern, and patterns can be retrained. A lot of people believe their first emotional reaction must be the most honest one. They think, if I felt it immediately, it must be true. That's not necessarily true. Your first reaction may very well be real. But real doesn't always mean accurate. Sometimes your first reaction is stress talking before the facts arrive. Someone doesn't answer your text, so your brain says they're upset with me. Your spouse gets quiet. Your brain says something's wrong. Your boss asks to speak with you, so your brain says I'm in trouble. Someone offers constructive feedback. Your brain says I failed. Your child seems distant. Your brain says, I'm losing them. A simple event could happen. Then your nervous system writes a full story, filling in the blanks. And that story usually reflects what you fear, not necessarily what's true. I can look back now and see this in my own marriage. When I was overseas, I would call home and sometimes hear the stress in my wife's voice almost immediately. She was, by all means, carrying the entire house. She was taking care of the kids. She handled all the responsibilities, the loneliness, everything that continued happening at home while I was thousands of miles away. I knew for a fact that she was overloaded. I knew she was exhausted, but I couldn't reach through the phone and take any of it off of her plate. Sometimes she would say, "You don't know what it's like here." And my immediate reaction was defensiveness. Of course. I would blow up and say something like, well, what do you want me to do? I'm over here fighting. I can't help you from here. On the surface, it sounded like anger. But underneath it, I wasn't really angry at her. I felt useless. I was listening to someone I loved struggle, and I couldn't fix it. I couldn't make dinner. I couldn't take the kids. I couldn't give her a break. I couldn't change the circumstances. And because I didn't know what to do with that helplessness, it came out as defensiveness and sometimes just flat out anger. Her pain felt like evidence that I was failing her. So instead of hearing, I'm overwhelmed, my nervous system heard, you're not doing enough. That wasn't necessarily what she was saying, but it was the story I assigned to the actual moment. It took me more than 20 years to fully understand what was happening inside me during conversations like that. At the time, I thought I was defending reality. I thought I was explaining that I was doing everything I could. But what I was really doing was reacting to helplessness, fear, exhaustion, and the belief that if I couldn't fix the situation, I was somehow useless inside it. That is exactly what reaction mode does. It turns an emotion you don't understand into behavior everyone else has to experience. The brain doesn't like uncertainty. We all know that. Uncertainty takes energy. So your mind reaches into memory, grabs the closest familiar pattern, and tries to predict what's happening. That can be useful at times. If you touch a hot stove, your brain learns quickly. Next time, you don't need a full congressional hearing. You move your hand. But emotional patterns can become inaccurate. If you've experienced rejection, silence may feel dangerous. If you've been criticized constantly, feedback may feel like an attack. If you grew up around unpredictable moods, someone else's quietness may make your body actually brace for impact. If you've been abandoned, distance may feel like proof that it's happening all over again. The moment may be new, but your body is responding to old evidence. Now, that doesn't mean you're irrational. It just means your system is trying to protect you from using the information it already has. The problem is that protection can become overreaction. And when that happens enough times, you begin to mistake the reaction for the actual truth. So let's talk about survival mode real quick, because my latest few posts have gotten a lot of attention. Survival mode exists for a reason. It helps you respond quickly when there's a real threat. If a car swerves towards you all of a sudden, you don't need to weigh 5 philosophical perspectives. You move. If your child is in danger, you react. If someone becomes violent, your body prepares. That system is extremely powerful. I was trained to use that system. As a reconnaissance Marine, vigilance wasn't an optional personality trait. You trained yourself to notice what was out of place. You scanned your environment, you read people, you recognize changes to anticipate problems before they actually ever reached you. Later in my life, while in law enforcement, some of those same instincts were in play. Watch the hands, watch the waistband, notice the vehicle, notice the people nearby. Pay attention to movement, tone, distance, and behavior. Again, that kind of awareness can keep you alive. It can protect the people around you. It can help you make decisions quickly when hesitation carries extremely catastrophic consequences. But there were points in my life when that level of vigilance became unhealthy. The problem wasn't the training was wrong. The problem was that my body didn't always understand when the mission had ended. I could leave the environment physically, but the environment didn't always leave me. So you can become accustomed to looking for danger that your nervous system keeps scanning even when you're home. You notice every sound, every change in tone, every person entering the room, every car that slows down, every exit after you enter a building or a room, every possible problem. You may be sitting at dinner with your family, but part of your mind is still running security. You may be in a grocery store, but your body is watching movement around you. You may be having a normal disagreement with your spouse, but your nervous system responds as if control of the situation has become a safety issue. The same instincts that made you effective in one environment can make it difficult to relax in another. That's an extremely important distinction. The response wasn't always broken. Sometimes it was highly trained. It was just being deployed in the wrong environment. And that doesn't only happen to military members or police officers. Parents become hyper aware of everyone's needs. Caregivers learn to anticipate the next crisis. Children raised in unstable homes become experts at reading the room. People who have lived with addiction, conflict, illness, or financial instability learn to stay ready. The nervous system will adapt. It says being prepared keeps us safe. The problem begins when it stays activated after the emergency ends, or when life becomes one long series of smaller emergencies with no real recovery in between. Work pressure, financial stress, parenting, relationship conflict, lack of sleep, caregiving, chronic pain, old trauma, constant responsibility. a phone that never stops making noise, a brain that never stops making lists. Eventually, the nervous system stops asking, is this actually dangerous? It just starts assuming danger is probably coming. That changes the way you move through the world. You become more sensitive to tone, more sensitive to silence, more sensitive to criticism, sensitive to changes in routine, sensitive to small inconveniences. The reaction isn't always about the size of the event. It's about how much pressure had already built before that event happened. That's why someone can handle a major crisis calmly, then completely lose it because the dishwasher wasn't loaded correctly. The dishwasher wasn't the problem. The dishwasher was the final witness called before the emotional congressional hearing. The real problem was the buildup. Your nervous system was already full. The small event just gave the pressure somewhere to go. So let's break down reaction mode just a little bit. It doesn't always look like anger. Reaction mode doesn't always look dramatic. Some people fight, some people flee. I'm sure everyone's heard of freeze. Some people try to keep everyone happy so conflict never happens. The fight response may look like snapping, arguing, interrupting, getting defensive, raising your voice, needing to win. The flight response may look like leaving the room, avoiding the conversation altogether, working constantly, staying busy so you don't have to feel, escaping into your phone maybe. The freeze response might look like going blank, feeling numb, not knowing what to say, shutting down, feeling physically stuck. And the people-pleasing response may look like apologizing immediately, agreeing when you don't agree, taking responsibility for everyone's emotions, avoiding honest boundaries, trying to calm everyone else before checking on yourself. These are all different behaviors, but they may all come from the same underlying question. Am I safe? The person who argues may be trying to create control. The person who leaves may be trying to escape pressure. The person who freezes may feel overwhelmed by too many possible consequences. The person who people pleases may believe connection depends on keeping everyone else comfortable. None of those patterns mean you're broken, but they can still damage your life if left unchecked. Understanding where a reaction comes from doesn't erase responsibility for what it causes. That's a major part of recovery. You can say my nervous system was overloaded and also say I'm still responsible for how I spoke. Both can be true at the same time. Explanation in and of itself is not an excuse. It's a starting point for change. So listen to this. Reaction mode is expensive. Think about it. Emotionally, relationally, physically, spiritually. When you're constantly reacting, your relationships begin to feel unstable. The people around you don't know which version of you they're going to get. You may become defensive before they even finish speaking. You may assume criticism when they're trying to actually connect. You may withdraw because every conversation feels like one more demand. Your spouse might say to you, I don't know how to talk to you anymore. Your child may stop bringing things to you because they're trying to avoid your stress. Your friends may assume you don't care because you keep disappearing. At work, you may become efficient but rigid, capable but constantly irritated, reliable but completely depleted. Reaction mode can also damage the relationships that you have with yourself. For instance, you replay moments afterward. You feel ashamed. You wonder why you can't control yourself. Or you promise it won't happen again. Then, inevitably, it happens again. That cycle can create a very dangerous belief that this is just who I am. I know what it feels like to live inside a cycle like that. Alcohol became part of my reaction pattern. It wasn't always one dramatic event that led to a drink. Sometimes it was a buildup of things I didn't know how to actually process. Feeling isolated, helplessness, feeling like I wasn't worthy, feeling like I should be stronger than whatever I was experiencing. These emotions would build day after day, year after year. But instead of naming them, talking about them, or asking for help, I would try to get away from them. Alcohol, of course, did its job. It offered temporary relief for a little while. I didn't have to sit with the fear, the shame, the isolation, the sense that I wasn't enough. But drinking didn't remove those emotions. It just delayed them. Then it added consequences, of course. I would drink because I didn't know how to deal with what I was feeling. Then I would feel shame about drinking. That shame reinforced the belief that I wasn't worthy. Feeling unworthy made me feel that I wanted to isolate. And of course, isolation made everything louder. And eventually, I would want relief again. That's the vicious cycle. Pain, reaction, escape, consequences, shame, isolation, more pain. Then the cycle repeats over and over again. That is what happens when we confuse relief with recovery. Relief changes how you feel for a moment. Recovery changes how you respond over time. Alcohol gave me an escape hatch, but every time I used it, I ended up deeper inside the same building. Recovery required me to stop asking, how do I make this feeling disappear? And begin asking, what is this feeling trying to tell me? What am I avoiding? What truth do I need to say out loud? What action do I need to take? Who do I need to call? Now, of course, that did not happen overnight. It required surrender, faith, meetings, a sponsor, honesty, accountability, and a hell of a lot of repetition. But it taught me something very important. You are not only your reaction. You are not only your worst moment. You are not only the pattern your nervous system learned under pressure. Patterns are practiced. That means recovery can be practiced too. So why does willpower alone usually fail? A lot of people try to fix reaction mode with willpower. So they tell themselves, next time I'm just going to stay calm. Now, of course, that sounds very responsible at face value, but it ignores how the nervous system actually works. You usually don't rise to the level of your intention under pressure. You fall to the level of your practice. That's true in combat, it's true in law enforcement training, it's true in sports, and it's true in recovery. You can't wait until the argument starts to learn. You can't wait until your heart is racing to build self-awareness. You can't wait until you're completely depleted to start sleeping, eating, hydrating, setting boundaries, and asking for help. Recovery has to be trained before the moment of impact. That's why I use the phrase recovery rep. A recovery rep is one intentional action that teaches your nervous system safety instead of survival. One pause, one breath, one honest sentence, one boundary, one walk, one moment of choosing response over reaction. It seems small, but small actions repeated consistently create a new baseline. That's what recovery is. Not one dramatic breakthrough, not one magic pill. A lot of ordinary choices that begin teaching the body, we don't have to respond the old way every single time. So let's talk about recovery rep number 1. Pause before you answer. The first rep is simple. Pause. Not for an hour, not until you've written a dissertation. Just long enough to interrupt the automatic response. 2 seconds can actually matter a lot. 5 seconds can matter as well. 10 minutes can completely change a conversation. When you feel the reaction rising, don't immediately speak. Feel your feet. Take one slow breath. Ask yourself, do I need to answer this right now? Sometimes the answer is yes, I get it. But oftentimes the pressure is telling you that everything is urgent when it isn't. So you can say, you know what? Give me a minute. I want to answer this well. I'm overloaded right now. Can we come back to this in about 10 minutes? That's not avoidance if you actually return. That's called regulation. The pause creates space between the trigger and the behavior. That space is where choice lives. Without the pause, the old pattern just gets the microphone. With the pause, your thinking brain has a chance to rejoin the conversation. Looking back at those overseas phone calls, I wish I had understood this then. I wish I had known that I didn't need to fix everything my wife was feeling. I didn't need to defend myself. I didn't need to prove that I was carrying something difficult too. I could have paused and just said, I hear how overwhelmed you are, sweetie. I hate that I can't take some of this from you right now. Tell me, what has today actually been like? Now, that wouldn't have changed the distance between us. It wouldn't have solved every single problem at home. I get that. But it could have helped her feel less alone. And it could have helped me stay connected instead of turning helplessness into anger. Sometimes the most important recovery rep isn't solving the problem. It's staying present without making someone else's pain about your inadequacy. Recovery rep number 2. Let's separate facts from assumptions. So before you respond, ask yourself 3 questions. What do I actually know? What am I assuming? And what would change if I waited 10 minutes? This is one of the most useful reset tools because reaction mode usually collapses facts and assumptions into one story. Fact: they haven't replied yet. So the assumption is they're ignoring me because they don't care. Fact: my spouse is quiet. Well, the assumption is they're angry at me or angry at something and preparing to leave. Fact: my boss wants to talk to me. The assumption: I'm about to lose my job. Fact: my child rolled their eyes. So the assumption is they have absolutely no respect for me and I've failed as a parent. The assumption may turn out to be true in some cases, but you don't know yet. We don't have a crystal ball. And reacting to an unverified story can create the exact conflict you were afraid of. Write it down if you need to. What happened? What meaning did I immediately assign to it? What other explanation is possible? You're not trying to talk yourself out of your instincts. You're giving your instincts competition. That matters because your nervous system may be fast, but speed is not the same thing as accuracy. Recovery rep number 3. Name the actual emotion. A lot of people say, I'm mad. And of course, sometimes they are. But anger is often the front door. Behind it may be fear, embarrassment, grief, disappointment, rejection, helplessness, exhaustion, shame. If you only deal with anger, you may miss what the anger is protecting. You may not be angry that your spouse forgot something. You may be afraid you're carrying the relationship alone. You may not be angry that your child ignored you. You may feel powerless and scared that you're losing influence. You may not be angry about feedback. You may feel ashamed because you're afraid one mistake proves you're not good enough. Naming the deeper emotion changes the conversation. Instead of saying, you never listen, you may be able to say, I felt dismissed, and I think that hit something deeper. Instead of saying, leave me alone, you may say, I'm overloaded and I don't know how to connect right now. Specific language lowers confusion. It gives your nervous system a name for what's happening. And what you can name, you have a better chance of regulating. This is part of the after-action recovery gap. The recovery gap is the distance between what you know you should do and what your nervous system currently allows you to do. You may know you should communicate calmly, but if your body thinks you're under threat, calm may not feel available yet. Naming the emotion helps narrow that gap. For me, this meant learning to say words like helpless, afraid, ashamed, overwhelmed, unworthy. For a long time, anger felt more available than any of those other emotions. Anger felt strong. Helplessness didn't. Defensiveness felt active. Fear did not. Drinking felt like action. Sitting with shame did not. But recovery taught me that strength isn't hiding the real emotion behind a louder one. Strength is telling the truth about what is actually happening inside of you. Recovery rep number 4. Regulate the body first. Now, you can't always think your way out of a body that believes it's under threat. Sometimes you have to work the body first. So we start simple. Unclench your jaw. Relax your shoulders if you can. Slow the exhale when you breathe out. Go for a walk, forced movement. Take a break, take a couple sips of water. Eat something if you haven't eaten. Step outside, get some sunlight, Reduce the noise. Put your phone down. Now, I understand this isn't glamorous. Nobody's making a dramatic movie montage about drinking water and taking a 10-minute walk. But basic regulation matters. Sleep deprivation makes reactions sharper. Hunger, of course, as we all know, makes patience thinner. Dehydration can make you feel worse. Too much caffeine can keep your system activated. Constant stimulation can make small problems feel much bigger. Your body isn't separate from your emotions. When the body is under strain, the threshold for reaction gets lower. This is why recovery begins with stabilization. You don't rebuild your whole life while the alarm is screaming. You quiet the alarm enough to make a better decision. That may mean breathing, walking, grabbing a quick bite, taking a small little rest, stepping away, or simply saying to yourself, I'm activated right now. I don't have to make this decision from here. For people with backgrounds like mine, regulation can feel uncomfortable at first. When your body has spent years equating vigilance with safety, relaxing can almost feel irresponsible. You may think to yourself, if I let my guard down, something will happen. But recovery isn't about becoming unaware. It's about learning that awareness and activation are not the same thing. You can still notice your surroundings without treating every environment like a threat. You can still be capable without staying clenched. You can still protect people without living as if the emergency never ended. Recovery rep number 5, repair quickly. Even with practice, you're still going to react sometimes. After all, we're only human. Recovery doesn't mean never getting it wrong. It means getting better at repair. A simple repair might sound like, I'm sorry. I was overloaded, but that wasn't okay. I got defensive before I understood what you were saying. I raised my voice. You didn't deserve that. I shut down. I want to try this conversation again. Notice what isn't in those statements. No excuses. No long explanation designed to make the other person comfort you. There was no, I'm sorry, but you also. That's not repair. That's an apology holding a knife behind its back. Real repair takes responsibility. It also teaches your nervous system something important. A mistake doesn't have to become a permanent rupture. You can return, you can reconnect, and you can try again. That's part of rebuilding trust. Not perfection, consistency. There are things that I can clearly see today that I couldn't see 20 years ago. Now, I can't go back and redo every phone call. I can't erase every defensive response, but I can understand it. I can take responsibility for it. I can speak honestly about what was underneath it, and I can respond differently today. That's repair also. Sometimes repair happens in the moment. Sometimes it happens years later when you finally gain the language to explain what you couldn't understand at the time. So here, the after action reset recovery follows 5 phases. Recognize. You can't change a pattern you refuse to notice. Recognize the signal. The tight jaw, the racing thoughts, the urge to interrupt, the desire to run or the desire to shut down, the story forming in your head before you know all the facts. Recognition is not the finish line. Keep that in mind. It's the first step. Stabilize. Calm the system enough to regain choice. Breathe, walk, eat, hydrate, sleep, reduce stimulation. Step away without disappearing. Make sure you come back. That's extremely important. Recover. Build recovery reps. Practice the pause. Separate facts from assumptions. Name the emotion. Set the healthy boundary. Have the honest conversation. Rebuild. Repair what reaction mode damaged. If it was a relationship, trust, patience, identity, faith, health, purpose. Sustain. Recovery becomes maintenance. You stop waiting for a breakdown before taking care of yourself. You build daily practices that keep the nervous system from living at the edge. That's the goal. Not never feeling stress. Recovering before stress becomes identity. So check this out. The military uses after-action reviews because performance improves when you examine what happened honestly. Not to shame people, but to learn. You can do the same after an emotional reaction. Ask, what happened? What did I feel in my body? What story was I telling myself? What did I need in that exact moment? What did I do? What did it cost? What would a better response look like next time? Then choose one recovery rep to practice. Not 10, not 5, 1. Maybe next time you try the pause. Maybe you lower your voice. Maybe you ask a question before making an accusation. Maybe you say, I'm reacting, let me slow down a bit. That's how you train. You don't just promise to be better. You identify the rep, then you practice that rep. This is how recovery becomes disciplined instead of emotional. So you stop waiting to feel different. You practice responding differently. When I look back at my own experiences, the after-action review sounds like this. What happened? Well, my wife was overwhelmed and I heard it through the phone. What did I feel? I felt helpless. I was afraid. I was exhausted. What story did I tell myself? I'm failing her and there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. What did I actually do? I became defensive and angry. What did it cost? Well, it cost connection. What did I actually need to do in the moment? Well, I needed to probably just listen, acknowledge her burden, and tell the truth about my own helplessness without making her responsible for it. That's how you turn regret into training. You don't deny what happened. You don't live inside shame about it forever either. You study it, you learn it, you practice a better response. So what happens when you need more than a reset? I want to be clear here. Not every problem can be solved with a pause and a walk. Sometimes reaction mode is connected to trauma. Chronic anxiety, depression, substance use, chronic pain, maybe a dangerous relationship, a medical issue, severe sleep disruption, years of unresolved experiences. Practical recovery skills are useful, but they are not a replacement for appropriate professional help. Strength isn't pretending you can handle everything alone. Strength is using the right resource for the problem in front of you. Now, that may include therapy, medical care, recovery meetings, pastoral guidance, a trusted friend, a support group, maybe marriage counseling, a sponsor, a doctor. The after-action reset isn't about replacing those things. It's about helping people recognize what's happening and practice recovery in daily life. Sometimes the recovery rep is asking for help. Sometimes it's making the appointment. Sometimes it's telling the truth for the first time. For me, recovery from alcohol required more than deciding I would do better. Self-knowledge alone definitely wasn't enough. Understanding the cycle automatically didn't free me from it. I needed outside help myself. I needed God. I needed a program of action. I needed a sponsor. I needed meetings. I needed accountability. I needed to stop isolating and start telling the truth. That wasn't weakness. That was the beginning of recovery. So hear me on this. Reaction is not your identity. This may be the most important part of the episode, so listen up. You're not doomed to react this way forever. If your nervous system learned vigilance, it can learn safety. If it learned defensiveness, it can learn curiosity. If it learned shutdown, it can learn honest connection. If it learned chaos, it can learn calm. Not instantly, not right away, and definitely not perfectly, but through repetition. The old pattern feels automatic because it has more practice. That's it. It has more repetitions. So recovery means giving the new pattern reps too. Means pause, name it, regulate, respond, repair, and repeat. Over time, what once felt unnatural begins to feel available. That's what building a new baseline actually looks like. Not becoming someone else, becoming less controlled by what happened before. My vigilance is still definitely a part of me. My experiences are still a part of me. My past reactions are still a part of my story. My recovery from alcohol is part of my story too. But none of those things get to be the entire definition of who I am, and not you either. Recovery doesn't erase where you've been or what you've done. It changes who gets to make the next decision. So today's reset. Before your next reaction, ask, what do I actually know? What am I assuming? What would change if I waited 10 minutes? Then do one thing to regulate your body. Take that breath, slow exhale, drop your shoulders, walk outside, drink some water. Say to yourself, I want to respond very well, just give me a minute. That's not weakness. That's recovery discipline. You are training your nervous system to stop treating every uncomfortable moment like an emergency. You're teaching your body that pressure doesn't have to make every single decision. You're closing the recovery gap, one rep at a time. And when someone you love tells you they're struggling, remember this: their pain isn't always an accusation. Their stress isn't always a verdict of your value. You don't always have to fix the moment to be useful inside of it. Sometimes you just simply need to stay, listen, acknowledge what they're carrying, and refuse to let your helplessness turn into something they have to defend themselves against. So remember, your first reaction isn't always the truth. Sometimes it's the echo of an old threat. Sometimes it's exhaustion. Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's professional conditioning that never learned how to stand down. Sometimes it's shame trying to escape itself. Sometimes it's invisible weight finally spilling into the room. Now, you still are responsible for how you respond, but responsibility doesn't require shame. It requires awareness, practice, repair, and consistency. Recovery isn't about becoming someone who never gets triggered. It's about becoming someone who recognizes the trigger before it takes control of them. Someone who can actually pause, someone who can tell the truth, someone who can repair, someone who becomes available again. That's where the work is, one recovery rep at a time. If this episode helped you understand why you keep reacting, I built a free 7-day survival mode reset PDF to help you start practicing recovery in small, realistic steps. It's available through my Beacons link. Subscribe to the channel, follow the podcast, and share this with someone who's tired of feeling controlled by reactions they don't fully understand. This is the After Action Reset. Recovery is trainable. I'll see you on the next one.